Welcome to today's episode of The Heart of the Matter, where we'll be talking to Ada Umeofia of Exodus, which is a foundation she's formed, about the mind revolution. It's something you mustn't miss. So we'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned.
These things sometimes are psychological.
I said it before, financial cost as one of the many reasons
It was a God experience. I just wanted to find God.
simply feeling like you're inspired. I mean, isn't always so.
Tell us about the solution.
As one
People
of
with
many
18 to 35 years of age start out at work.
Hey, I don't have the skill for this particular problem to solve this particular problem.
None of us talked about the bread seller.
Welcome again to The Heart of the Matter, where today I'm talking with Ada Umeofia, who is an architect, designer, and I think maybe more important to her, the founder of Exodus, which she's going to talk all about today. Ada, there was a turning point in your life that changed your perspective on Nigeria. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been in a bubble. I think I was born in a bubble. I was kind of raised in a bubble, and I consciously took myself out of this bubble. But I wasn't really ready for what I was about to experience when I did. So then when I did that consciously, I was like, I want to live by myself and just function on my own accord. And I realized all the issues with the country, how there's just no power. I had to get a jet, all these things. And that was fine. I was kind of still functioning outside of the bubble, but kind of still in the bubble. And then they passed this law that you couldn't buy fuel anymore in a jerry can. And I didn't have a car. I still don't have a car. And essentially, without a car, you cannot get fuel in the country. And so I was a bit confused because that was the day before, 2 days before I'd gotten fuel. And then I just wanted to top up my, gen, and I couldn't do it. And so I went there because usually my helper goes. But then I went there by myself with my jerry can, and I'm trying to have just a genuine transaction be done. But then there was a different experience. It was a completely different experience. Like, I'd gone there initially, and they'd first of all thrown my jerry can out of the place because they say they don't sell fuel to jerry cans anymore. But I could see that they were selling fuel to jerry cans in cars. And I'm trying to ask them, like, why are you telling me I can't do this? Like, telling me I should get my generator from the house to put fuel in here when you're selling fuel to a car. And it seemed as though I was disturbing them, I was irritating them, and so there was hostility for some reason, and I was not understanding how things had changed all of a sudden. And so I persisted. I was there, I went to there 11, and I stayed, and I waited, and I was trying to just get fuel, and I went eventually, because some people had already left, and so I eventually went to the office, the main office, and that's when I saw who I guess was in charge, and I think there was a bit of a, when I went in there, I just kind of knew that this wasn't just going to go well. But I needed to get what I wanted to get, right? And I'm gonna pay for it essentially. But there was this idea of like me having to give something as well. So he was proposing options where he's saying, "Oh, I can give you a husband at the station. You can be calling him if you want." And I'm like, no, and then, this was actually the manager, so this was him then trying to manage the situation, because there were a lot of people there. Another woman came with her sister trying to plead with him, actually kneeling down for him to please give her. She's not as if she's begging for the fuel, she wants to pay for it, you know what I mean? And it's this idea of just complete shift of just what happens behind the scenes. I'd never really seen that before.
I'm going to go back a little to what you said at the beginning. You said you lived or you grew up in a bubble.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is it good for people to grow up in bubbles?
It's safe. It's safe. I don't know if it's a good thing, but it's a safe thing.
Because by bubble, I guess you mean you had lived a sheltered life.
I did.
So you weren't exposed to what is probably the reality of life, let me say, on the streets.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so you will one day have children of your own. Will you bring them up in a bubble?
Definitely not. Definitely not. I think there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance of the truth and the possible sort of, because I will create an environment that is safe enough for my children, but I will not hide them from the facts, from the truth, from the suffering. No.
So let's go back to the fuel station. You hadn't ever faced anything like this before. And all of a sudden you're confronted with the fact that people take advantage of others. Sometimes it's more than just taking advantage, it's abuse.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where in this did Exodus come from? How did all this give birth to Exodus?
I think it woke me up. I kind of woke up because of that, and I think there was a bit of purging that was necessary, where I did all the necessary crying and like the anger. There was so much anger. I was so angry, but I didn't cry at the station. I just took it, and then I went and I wept and I prayed, and I'm like, this cannot be my country. This cannot be like the reality, you know. And I wanted to be part of whatever reality that was right. You know, I wanted to create that reality as well as, you know, be guided to do it. I can't really explain it, but there was like a hope. I needed something, and I was seeking something, and I was seeking to be part of that thing that shifts the reality of this country.
You said Exodus 3:3.
Yes, yeah.
And that's special to you. Why?
Yeah. So it's where, so I really like the story of Moses. Everybody knows the story of Moses. You know, he sees like there's this bush burning fire, and you know all this stuff happens. But I think for me, when I was reading that, I noticed that there was a conversation. So Exodus 3:3 says, so Moses thought to himself, I will now look at this bush and see why it's not burning, because that was when, you know, and then the Lord said, after he saw Moses, called out to him, Moses, Moses, and then he said, here I am. So I think there was this like conscious choice that Moses had to make to face what it was that didn't make sense. And then I think once one chooses to do that, then God and the universe kind of opens up and begins to now converse with the individual. And I feel like that's where I was. I was in that place where I was like, okay, now I see this thing and it makes no sense. I mean, what can I actually do? And then the conversation began. Truly, I don't know. I can't really explain, but it was a journey.
Let me ask another question on this. Why the name Exodus?
But I mean, I wanted to be true to the experience. And then it really, Exodus means a kind of shifting, a moving from one place to another, you know, and for me, it was very much, because this country is fruitful, it's blessed, it's incredible. I've learned so much through even this process of like investigating my country. And so we're not moving out of Nigeria, but moving minds is what I feel Exodus is about. Like when I think about it, it's a shifting of minds from this sort of place where we are to a completely sort of...
So what is the mission
Yes.
of Exodus?
So it's really and truly, so I tagged it on that it's mind revolution. It's a mind revolution. And through that sort of thinking ourselves out of this condition and guide, Exodus is a model that guides that process where we think ourselves out of this sort of...
Okay, so Exodus is not set up to actually go help people that are in trouble. Exodus is to reach people's minds and say, how do we get out of this?
Yeah,
Okay.
like actively thinking. So it's also kind of it's a design school model. So essentially we are redesigning the country. We are actually taking on the country as a design project, and we've broken it down into all the sectors. You know, it's not any separate from what the politicians do, but we are just coming in as sort of thinkers in this time to solve the problems.
So you are, by profession, a designer.
Yeah.
You design
architect.
buildings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And now you've used your skill as an architect to look at how you can design a new Nigeria. We're going to go on a break in a moment, but we want to hold that thought. What are the implications of your design for Nigeria? So via stay tuned. We'll be back with Ada after the break. See you in a moment. Welcome back, where we've been talking to Ada Umeofia about the mind revolution. Now, before we went off air, you talked about Exodus, and we wanted to know what is the modus operandi of Exodus. Exodus is there to promote a change in Nigeria. So how do you intend to achieve it through Exodus?
With the imagination, actually.
Okay.
So as an architect, I'm, I guess, privileged to
Create.
Yes, to imagine in my mind, to think about something, and to actually see it materialize. And I've been doing that, and I didn't really realize how powerful that was, but it really is the building block of this entire experience that we have. Every table that you touch was in someone's mind. The thing you're sitting on was in someone's mind first. So imagination is this powerful thing, and I don't think it's separate from applying it to the country as well that we're in.
So what is your objective? To get people thinking or to think for people?
To begin to get people to think for themselves. If we can create a model where someone can imagine, to think about an issue, imagine a solution, manifest the solution, and that's, that's it. That's really all it is. And we have cycles that help to do that on a sort of process-based type of way.
Can you break it down for us?
Yes, yes.
What are these cycles? Just tell us. You've got Joe Bloggs.
Sorry?
You've got Mr. Bloggs.
Okay.
On the street.
Joe Bloggs, okay.
And you want to get him to have a mind revolution. So what would you do? What's the process of getting him from where he is, the guy who's a filling attendant at the fuel station, or somebody that comes struggling to get fuel? How do you get him through the process of the mind revolution?
Well, there's the willingness first. I feel one has to, be willing. I cannot drag an individual. The opportunity is there, so there's the openness then I feel is necessary. And then you come in, you say you're interested in, the energy sector, for example. You're interested in it. You're interested in that whole sort of how it works. And then so we start off with research. We go through researching, I guess each individual will have to pick a sector that they're interested in, researching the sector, and through the process of research.
So what you're doing is you're recruiting people, taking them through a process that will make them changes.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you because everybody complains about things, but then no one realizes they can actually come up with a solution for themselves in it. I think there's this general idea that there's a problem and there's nothing can be done about it. But then because we have our minds, because we have imagination that's free, we can think ourselves out of a solution. And I think it's just time that matters.
Who are you aiming at? Because the people that are suffering the most are not likely to be able to participate in Exodus. So you're aiming for people who are going to have to make a sacrifice.
I mean, not per se. It's not necessarily a sacrifice. I think it's just to step out of the bubble for a bit. I'm
Which
really...
is a sacrifice.
Okay, fair enough. That's true. It really is. But it's a sacrifice of personal, comfort and personal...
So you're going to become, you have to decide to become a blessing rather than the recipient of blessings.
Truly,
Okay.
yeah.
So what's the process? You talked about cycles. I want to be part of Exodus. And I come up to you and you say, what are you interested in? I say energy. So where do we go from there?
Okay, so there's 4 categories. There's also ways we've broken down the sector. So you can either choose to approach any sector in identity, fabric, experience, or scale. So energy is most likely...
When you say fabric, what do you mean by fabric?
Fabric is bare necessities, so which is where energy falls under. So there's a lot of sectors under that sort of fabric of the country. So then you have to then
thinking about fabric like...
Oh, no, no, fabric is like a sort of just the brute, the bare things that you need. So energy, you come in, everybody picks a different sector. So we're all kind of in this together. And there's roughly we want 11 people every cycle. And so you come in with your energy now, you research.
So what is a cycle?
So a cycle is a 3-month. Right now it's a 3-month program. We ran the first only on weekends. Okay. And so we essentially just meet, because that was just the available time for most people. And so essentially, we meet every weekend, and every 2 weeks we have presentations. So every stage in the cycle has a presentation element. So you come in, you do the research, and everyone learns from your research in whatever sector you've done. Okay. Next stage, you find the hole in this research. When you've researched something, you found a problem. There's definitely a problem. So then you go, this is what I've discovered in this energy sector, for example, and this is what I'm interested in addressing. You present that, everyone is aware, and then it also same goes for every other sector that is being sort of discovered or investigated. And then an idea, and then there's a process of actually brainstorming. We all kind of think about this individual problem that everybody has found and pose solutions, like what is the point, why is it there, what can be done? And so the individual then goes takes all these things in, and then it comes in. I feel like it's just a natural thing with us human beings. We have the ability to think and imagine a new sort of, if you want to, if you are willing, you can come up with a really great idea that's a solution.
So obviously the research cannot happen over the weekend.
No. So you have to do your...
You take your topic and you go And so where do they do the research?
It's just by
Generally?
yourself, you know,
Okay,
you do
go
it
on
on your own
Google.
time, yeah. And I did mine, because I also ran the program myself. I picked the resources sector.
Okay.
And so I ran that, I did my research after work. I do my own personal research, you know,
Okay, so
before I
what
went
was
to-
your sector?
Mine was resources.
Okay,
And so
what within resources?
I then picked clay as this resource that I feel had been...
Clay?
Yeah. There was a lot. We have gold. There was so much that I discovered we even have, but then I'm particularly interested in clay as an architect, just as a way of life that was existing before. Our ancestors used so much clay, and now there's just not that much clay around. And I was just curious as to why that happened. And then I discovered that that there's all of these benefits to clay. There's energy efficient. You don't even need AC apparently when you use clay, and it's soundproof and it's anti-moisture. Because actually, I did the experiment where you put cement blocks in water and you put clay in water, and cement begins to mold because of all the moisture, and clay just doesn't. And I think that is revolutionary to me, because I now can see beyond the painted walls. Everything is molding. We just don't know. So it's very unhealthy. But clay is a very fascinating material. And then I zoomed in again further, just based on the conversations and stuff I was having with the group. I then zoomed into the molecular structure of clay. So like, what is clay made of in like an atomic, molecule? And I realized that it actually is like it's a building block. It builds itself. It's through triangles essentially and tetrahedrons, and so it has a logic of its own. And so I was like, wouldn't it be interesting to kind of bring that into a physical scale? And then I did make these triangular modules, and then essentially kind of made a wall of sorts with this clay thing, but it's mimicking what it was doing in its molecular structure. But because of this program, I was allowed to continue investigating, and I then actually made a full clay wall. And then I made that was in cardboard, and then I made a clay version of the actual thing. So now I'm thinking, instead of actually having, these bricks, cement bricks, you can actually have clay octahedron bricks to build walls of from. I mean, it's a possibility.
Okay, so
But
what happens? You took clay.
yes.
And you had a few other people that took different things.
Yes.
Now you've got to bring everything into the melting pot.
Yes.
And everybody's going to talk about each person's.
Yes.
So that must be lots and lots of time.
Yeah, it is. It's 3 months, right? So then, but that's because we also had the weekends. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's actually even shorter. I felt like it was a shorter period. I think what was the hardest part was actually just continuing to go forth.
Because I think that everything you discovered about clay, you share with the people. But you're sharing with people who are also anxious to share with
Their
you
own, yes.
about what they've discovered.
Yeah.
So that's, just getting people together. And everybody's got something to say, but not
Yeah.
everybody's as attentive to
Yeah.
what others have to say. So how do you now take clay again? We've got down to the point where you've discovered as much as you are likely to discover for now about clay. How do we now take that into something that is going to make an impact?
I mean, I think that at this point, for me, it's just a matter of then solving the problem. Because I very much believe in imagination as itself, as a currency, as the thing. So at this point in time, I don't think anyone is interested, right? I've tried to have conversations about people, what would you think about living in a clay home? And no one's interested. But I think it then takes another...
When you say living in a clay home,
yeah,
you're not talking about a home that isn't plastered, it's just got clay. You see the bare clay.
yeah. No, also, but I think also clay can be painted. Clay can be anything, I think there's this idea of clay that we have a perception of this historic time, but because we're in a modern time, and because I really feel like if I'm going to be exploring this further, it's going to be a beautiful experience with making a home in clay. So I think with this, it's all a personal thing, right? I'm going to take it a step further and eventually build my home in clay, and actually prove the case that clay is possible as this modern, as this new, as this kind of refreshing and healthy living solution. But right now, where I'm at, I'm still hustling, I'm still trying to survive, and so right now I know that I have like something, I have an idea, and that's enough for me, and I'm ready to move to the next sector.
Okay. Before we go on a break, have any of the others brought ideas that you have said, wow, I didn't know this, and they've infected you with their enthusiasm for their idea?
Definitely. One of the other sort of Exodus members took media, and she came up with this whole platform for sharing good news, because you realize on TV, on just every news, it's just a lot of bad news. And I don't understand how, and I guess it's a thing that, I don't know, I guess maybe we feed off it in a way, but she thought about it differently on like an experience point of view and an identity point of view as well. And she's like, I want to change the perception of like, of our narrative, you know, like, and I want to tell good news. And she went through a process of just like, you know, highlighting all of these incredible, I didn't even know there was so much good news to be told, but that really changed my perception of things, because I was always hearing bad news. And I really feel like that, even in the process of us even discovering that with her, was so great, because I think there was just, all of us were even complaining about all the bad news in the beginning, but at the end, we then end up having more conversations about the good things that are happening. And I think it's a big deal, you know, it's a very small idea, but it's a really big deal, because once you start talking about good news, then it becomes infectious, and then there's hope, you know. And so I think that in itself, for me, was very inspiring, that like with the same pattern, the same model, but then a different outcome. And I think it can work for anything. It can work for any other sector. So really.
So we're going to take a short break. Viewers, we'll be back in a moment with Ada and the Mind Revolution. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where I'm talking with Ada Umeofia. And we're just talking about Exodus. And you talked about the modules that you have. You talked about your model, which was clay. You talked about somebody who picked media, and her model was good news. Now, what else do you do in Exodus? What are the other things that you do that provoke people to thinking?
We confront compassion. We explore compassion, and sort of broken down into self-compassion and external compassion. So self-compassion, we just have conversation about topics such as purpose, shame, doubt, fear.
Say something about purpose.
Purpose.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much trying to understand it, because they're very abstract and very kind of, everyone it's kind of the light that goes into everyone, you know, that everyone is aware of this thing of this purpose thing. Then everyone has their own perspective of it, and then it's just a matter of us coming together and trying to understand it from different people's perspectives.
If you ask me about discussions,
Yeah.
the first thing I'd say is that discussions have to be controlled, otherwise you'll go all over the place. So how do you manage that when you're talking about something like purpose and everybody's making a contribution?
I think it's more intuition. You know, there's the intuitive sort of experience of it, and then guiding of it. I can't really explain it, but when we have conversations, it's honesty. Honesty is a big thing that I push in these sessions, and transparency. And I think because I start first, I have my own, I share first. I always kind of set the tone for just as the thing that that is just expected, and I'm as honest as possible, especially with the shame. When we were talking about shame, I was very honest about that, and I think once, you know, my honesty, I put that on the table, everybody else sort of followed.
Tell us a little bit about shame.
Shame. I think shame is very personal, right? Shame is a very, very, very personal thing. And I think you suffer from shame because it's all in your head, it's all in your reality, and it's not based on anything else but your own perception of yourself and the world, and in its alignment with the world. So for me, I think there's this sort of idea of this woman that I should be, the way I should look, the way I should dress, the way I should kind of, be, and I wasn't that in like my natural sort of body type or like my natural inclinations. I just wasn't that. And in some ways, being here, it's just everything is in your face, right? And I think there's it's just a bit of, I don't even know where it came from, but the shame crept up as this thing that, that I had to battle, and I can't, it's confusing. It's a very confusing thing, but I feel like now I understand that as a construct that was outside of myself. It was something that was imposed into my understanding of my identity, and I had to face that. And I think that helped a lot because I wasn't the only one going through, because so many, men experience shame differently from women do, and even women amongst us, we do. It's just there's so many angles, and that really, really helped to get different perspectives of just that honest, open confession. And yeah, I think no one is alone, and I think if you can face yourself and then, understand that you can face another person and then understand their suffering, and then you can face a country and understand the suffering. And I think that's the backbone of our sort of revolution, essentially. It's the mind, but it's also compassion in a way.
You talked about revolution.
Yeah.
And a revolution brings about change, not necessarily abrupt change. How do you expect the mind revolution through Exodus to bring about change in Nigeria? What is your goal for Nigeria now?
So I see this country in like 100 years, right? And so I've fast forwarded time in a way. I've projected into like an ideal country, an ideal like an experience, and I think that there's a conscious effort of...
Have you actually tried to reduce some of these images you see in 100 years into something that you can show people today?
Yes, actually, and I think with everything, it's all an internal conversation. So I see something and I'm like, okay, let me make this, because I can't explain. I can't just be talking about it. I have to make it. I have to, show it. I have to draw it. I have to just do something to communicate. And Exodus really is just like a teleporting medium. We go into the future, figure it out. Like we figure everything out, and then we're trying to communicate that amongst ourselves. And then I really feel like we're building a library of imaginations. You know what I mean? And inevitably, this country will, 100 years will come, right? Or even 10 years, but there's a sort of incremental thing that we're doing. And I feel like the country will catch up inevitably. Then we'll be ready at the time in which the country is ready to change. So it's just a matter of preparing ourselves. And I'm very big on, let's just leave everything as it is right now. Like we're not going to, there's this quote actually, I just want to use this quote. This Buckminster Fuller says, you don't change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So that I believe 100%. Like, I don't think we can go in and start fighting with these guys. Like, that's not the point. The point is to build an entirely new system that makes so much sense that it's inevitable that it's being adopted. So it's then just waiting, doing the work, thinking about it, and working towards like this, imagination, and then leaving it for the time in which, it's time. I believe there's a time for everything truly. And I believe it. I believe time is all it takes, so it's just imagining and waiting.
Let me ask you one question that our president said, if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill Nigeria. Now, what can Exodus do about corruption?
I feel like corruption is very layered because it has a lot to do with integrity and the lack of it. And I think that integrity is also one of the topics of compassion. So it's no longer, I don't feel like there's like a physical design model for solving corruption. I think it's a very internal process that everyone has to actively take a stance to be of integrity, of honesty, of compassion, so that stance in itself will demolish that inevitably. If all of us decide now that integrity is what we stand for, corruption will not even be a conversation. So I think corruption is it's a flaw of character. It's a character-based problem, unfortunately, and I feel like that's why I really believe compassion is a thing that needs to be part of our revolution. We need to talk about character. We need to build character as well as building the country, but we need to build ourselves. So I think corruption is strange. It's a strange problem, but really and truly, it's all the individual that has to play that part for themselves, I believe.
Now, Ada, when we introduced you as an architect. How do you manage architecture with this burning vision to impact your generation? How does it work? Does Exodus get in the way of architecture, or does architecture get in the way of Exodus?
No, it doesn't. It works hand in hand. I feel like architecture allowed for me to understand the blueprint element of just how to actually redesign a country. And it helps. Like, I think I can't imagine doing this without my understanding or without my background as an architect. It helps a lot to just lay everything out. Like, I see all the pieces of this broken puzzle, and it's just then figuring out what to do with these individual pieces. And architecture helps me to, like I said, imagine and manifest, and also to plan that imagining, like to plan the manifestation rather. And so it helps with Exodus a lot because we need to first imagine, but we need to plan it out and we need to manifest it as well.
So what you're saying is being an architect helps with Exodus, but architecture is your bread and butter.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
Oh, yes.
So you need to actually
Yes.
have time
Oh, yes, I
to
see what you
design
mean.
people's...
Yes. I do have to do that. I mean, it actually helps to fund the, bits and pieces of Exodus. So I, do a lot of design work, interior design work, graphic design, anything I can. And with the money that I make from that, I just go right. It's like my actual... It's like it's my CSR for myself, but it goes right in because we have to get a place to run these cycles. So we, do that with the money. So I mean, it's helping. I think it doesn't take out because as I'm giving into that, more is coming in, and I believe that's just God. That's the universe doing its thing for me because I believe my purpose is very much hinged to Exodus, but I need architecture to feed that. So yeah, I think everything is working out. Everything is working out.
Lots of people have been watching the program, I hope. And if there's a viewer who wants to get involved with Exodus, what do they do?
Just go on exodus.ng.
Okay.
I think that, it's not much else I can push a person to do. It's all however you are led. And I think I've laid everything out. There's, you can apply or you could just seek further. You could be part of it, or you could just sort of, want to, just any resource, whatever it is. I don't know. I think it's right now I'm not really thinking about how to guide the individual. I've just laid everything out. Exodus.ng is there. And it's up to the individual to actually be a part. I actually am seeking more applicants to imagine. I want more imaginations to be manifested. So I feel like everybody has the capacity to imagine. It's just a matter of willingness.
So if somebody is watching the program and says, well, I'd like to do something to support Ada, but I can't get involved in day-to-day or in Exodus directly. What would they do?
I guess just contact.
Just contact you through the website.
Yes.
So that's www.exodus.ng.
Yes.
Okay, great. Ada, it's been great having you on the Heart of the Matter, and we look forward to hearing more about Exodus and to seeing you again.
Awesome, thank you.
Viewers, it's been wonderful bringing this episode of the Heart of the Matter to you. We'll be back again next week with another episode, so tune in. God bless you. Stay blessed.